Coming from the Beer to Whiskey Studios on the taproom floor of Greenville Beer Exchange, or GBX as we sometimes call it, all the cool kids call it that, on Lawrence Street in glorious, terrific downtown Greenville, South Carolina. I'm Russ Heaps, and welcome to this episode of It's Just Bourbon. And what we do is we find a bourbon that maybe we have had or haven't had, but certainly haven't featured on the show before. We sip it, we sniff it, we kibitz about it. If we know anything about the distillery, we'll talk about that. We don't know a heck of a lot about distilling, so we don't really dive into that a whole lot. But what we do is drink a little bourbon, or rye if it happens to be rye. In this case, it's bourbon. And I'm here with my good buddy, Big John Richards, who is the beer whisperer for Beer to Whiskey. But he's got a great palate. We love drinking together. So not only do we do the beer episodes, we do all the episodes together pretty much. Anywho, so today we've got a bottle of Old Fitzgerald Bottled-in-Bond 19-year from the Decanter series. This is I would classify it as a unicorn. It's a tough bottle to find. Released in 1922. I mean, my gosh, 19 years old. And this came into my possession because I just had a birthday. And a good friend of mine, we'll just leave it at Dan, gave me this for my birthday. And because of that, Dan, we salute you. So we've got this magnificent bottle of bourbon. Bottled-in-Bond, what that means is it goes into the bottle at 100 proof. It's aged at least 4 years. It's entirely made at the same distillery by the same distiller in the same distilling cycle. And the distilling cycles, as legally defined, are January through June and July through December. So it happens in one of those two periods of time. And it's aged in a bonded warehouse that's government controlled. I'm not sure how much control the government has. But anyway, this is an official thing, and the government oversees it to some extent. I don't know if it's the Secret Service or ATF. I don't know if it's a 3-letter agency. I don't know who does it. But somebody does. They oversee that. As I mentioned already, to be Bottled-in-Bond, it's 100 proof. And Old Fitzgerald is one of the things about Bottled-in-Bond is the reason why they started doing that way back when is because bourbon wasn't distributed in bottles. It was distributed in barrels. And it was made, the distillers sold barrels and people bought the barrels, and then people fudged with the barrels, and they pawned different things off as bourbon that weren't really bourbon. It was like vodka with different flavors and colors mixed in and whatever. And you could do anything you wanted to do. So the distillers got together and they were like, we need something to regulate this. And that's how Bottled-in-Bond came about. And they made these very strict rules. And so here we've got it. It kind of fell out of favor because, let's face it, you look at Maker's Mark, Jack Daniels, Basil Hayden. You look at a lot of these, and they're 80 to 90 proof bourbons. And so that was kind of what became popular. And the bottled in bond fell out of favor because they were 100 proof. And it's only been in the last probably 8 or 10 years that some of these distilleries have really put forward their bottled in bond again. And bars have actually been carrying them in restaurants because people's taste have matured to the point where they want something more than an 80 or 90 proof. They want 100 proof, 110, 120. So these have come back into favor. This release was the 10th release of the Old Fitzgerald Bottled in Bond. And there are like 8-year releases, there are 10-year releases, there are other age groups. This is 19 that was released in 2022. Old Fitzgerald is produced by Heaven Hill. And I remember as a kid back in the 70s, Heaven Hill, you had, I think, a black label and a green label, Heaven Hill. And that's kind of what Heaven Hill produced. And now it has become very sophisticated. It is the largest family-owned distillery in America. And it's owned by, hold on.
I couldn't believe reading this, how many good names are on that list.
I know. It's owned by the Shapira family. And I'm trying to think, I saw that one of the Shapiras is still running it, and I saw his name, and I can't remember it now. However, these guys produce some serious stuff. What has kind of taken the place, although you can still get the Heaven Hill label, I think, in Kentucky, you don't really see it outside of Kentucky. But what has replaced Heaven Hill as sort of the General Mills or General Motors rather of Heaven Hill bourbons is Evan Williams, and it is no slouch. Evan Williams single barrel. We did
won one of our blind tastings,
yeah,
right?
and it came in second the following year. It's really a sippable. At my house, it's what I have for mixing. If somebody wants to make a bourbon and Coke or bourbon and ginger ale or whatever, I set out a bottle of Evan Williams. However, Evan Williams is very sippable. It is really good.
I put regular Evan Black in my cabinet all the time. And I'll put it in the thing. I'll put a little splash of water in there. I'll sit, watch a movie, and it gets golden.
Yeah. And not only that, Evan Williams is like, the single barrel is 30, 31, 32 bucks for a bottle of it. It's not expensive, and it is really good. But beyond that, Heaven Hill does Elijah Craig. They do Henry McKenna. Who else?
And those are both like San Francisco winners.
Yeah. Larceny. They do Larceny. They do Parker's Heritage Collection, which is kind of an upscale thing. The mash bill, corn 75%. This is a weeded bourbon. So instead of rye, it's got 20% wheat, and then it's got 5% malted barley. It is glorious.
Russ is beating me on this one because, well, it's his birthday beer, whatever this is, whiskey. And so this was already open before we started.
My buddy Dan just gave it to me 3 days ago. And I was over there to have dinner, and he hadn't been able to get a hold of it in time he had ordered it and couldn't get it. Because The least expensive I've ever seen this priced anywhere is about $260 a bottle. In the aftermarket, in the secondary market rather, $1,200, $1,500. I have no clue what he paid for this, but it was a lot. It was a lot. But be that as it may, this was something that I just got about 3 or 4 days ago. He handed it to me, and I had to share it with him. I couldn't just
It's part of
tuck
that's
it
what,
under my arm and
that's
run
what
home
birthday
with
beer
it.
is. You can drink it whenever you want, but you have to open it and share it with the
Yeah.
person who gave it to you.
Yeah. So we tried it, and holy cow. So,
Well,
having
right.
said that, John,
I am honored and thrilled that you would share this with me. Cheers.
Teximus Lily.
Stop it. First thing, the very, very first thing that I thought I smelled was raspberries. And that would be an odd thing to get out of a bourbon. I would think it would be more cherries, which is probably really what it is. But now I'm smelling the booze, but I'm also smelling the toffee and the bread and that kind of caramelly back end that's typical of a bourbon.
And the fact that this is 19 years, it was 19 years old in 2022. It's now 2024, so it's been sitting in a bottle for another 2 years. So this stuff doesn't keep forever. But I have to say, it is still remarkable.
It's definitely cherries. Oof, that real good. Yeah, it's that waffly, toasty side of bourbon that I thoroughly enjoy.
What happens when bourbon gets this old? And it happens, I don't know where exactly on the time scale that it happens, but I think probably once you get over 4, 5, 6, 7 years, some of the predominant flavors are like leather and tobacco, and that certainly comes across here, I
Yeah.
think. Although
That's not the first thing I'm tasting.
no, but it as it sits on my tongue.
Yeah.
But it does on the front end, you do get the traditional bourbon flavors of caramel and vanilla and
Yeah. As it sits with me, I think I'm getting more and more of those musty, leathery kind of
yeah.
flavors, aromas, and whatnot. That first thing, that waffly thing is just the caramelization we talk about in beer, these Maillard flavors, the Maillard reaction, which is what happens when you take a sugar and burn it. And that's what happens in pudding. That's what happens in bread. That's what happens in everything that's got any sort of a grain. If you toast it, you get Maillard reaction. And that's what I'm referencing here. It's when you put a waffle in a waffle iron and you're burning the top of it. And that flavor is exactly the thing that I'm getting on the front end of this.
Wow.
It makes me want to put it over ice cream, but that would be silly.
I don't know that's silly.
Man, my family's old Christmas tradition. I may be like a fourth or a fifth generation on this on this waffle recipe. That's my family's waffles, and
Waffle.
our waffle. That's our Christmas tradition was waffles on Christmas night.
Oh,
Grandma
really?
would make waffles, ice cream, and all the canned fruits that she had canned over the course of the season. And I remember literally making myself sick on waffles one year, Christmas night, and it was glorious.
Everybody should have some special Christmas memories.
Right. So that said, weirdly, this is reminding me of Christmas. It's probably part and parcel of why I wanted to pour it over ice cream. Oh man, those big toffee flavors coming out of that once I put a couple of drops in there.
I don't get the nose out of things that you typically get. I just don't. My smeller's not that good. Uh, what I what I notice is that it is a couple of drops of water tamped down for me the nose on it.
Oh man.
Tamped it down.
Well, I think it took the aggressiveness off.
Right.
Like I'm not having to kind of avoid the acetone, that the ethanol aroma. And so some of that came through, but man, that hits your palate and all the bite, just those two drops, the bite is almost gone. And it is those big, rich butterscotch and toffee flavors. Ooh, baby, is that good?
Have you tasted it?
I just did. Yeah. I beat you to it by a second or two.
It increases the spice, I think.
Oh, I went the other way. I thought it
Oh,
decreased
really?
the spice for me. I thought I was getting more spice before I put it in there. Now, the way it lingers with me, I think I'm getting more spice, like as I'm talking over it.
Well, but what I'm talking about is, and because you're dealing with a wheated bourbon here,
Yeah.
you're not going to get as much rye spice out of it.
Right.
But I think before the water, I was with you. I was getting a little bit of the acetone. Now I'm not getting the acetone. I'm actually getting more of a spicy thing out of it.
I agree. On the nose, for sure, I'm getting more. I'm processing more of the spice on the nose. When it hits my palate, I'm getting more of the toffee and the butterscotch. That is remarkably smooth. Is this 100 proof in the bottle?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And
Is that why it says 100 on the green label right there?
yes, it does. That's exactly why. Let me see what I'm.
Before we started, I wondered why there was $100, like $100 designation because it's green, but it's not what it is. I'm killing time for you, Russ.
I know. I'm looking for. I thought I'd written all this stuff down. I was going to say the S word, but
Naughty,
okay.
naughty.
This is. Oh no, I'm thinking. I'm thinking of the one we're doing next. Never mind. Never mind.
All right.
I was
We'll
thinking
get that on the editing floor.
I was thinking about we're doing one next that's got the barrel and the barrel number, bottle number, and some other things on it. So that wasn't this one.
Fun stuff. That's pretty remarkable.
That's sweet.
I'm a little daunted because I brought us a bourbon for next, which I thought was very good, which I still think is very good. And I'm trepidatious about how it's going to hold up after having this pretty objectively fantastic bourbon. But I'm excited. I think it's going to be good, and I can't wait to do that. And I said all that to say that is remarkable. I mean, that is a really, really well put together bourbon. There's a ton of stuff going on in there. There is a ton of flavors that change as it sits on your palate, that change as it sits in the room for a minute, and that is neat.
I've been to the Bourbon Trail and a bunch of the distilleries in the Lexington, Kentucky area. Heaven Hill is in the Bardstown area, which is southwest of Louisville. and I've never really spent any time at those. I need to go and spend some time at because it's there's a really rich bourbon thing going on there, and man, putting stuff out like this, it's like
That
holy
is
cow.
that is remarkable.
Yeah.
That's fun stuff.
Are we done?
Well, I think we can be done if you want to be. And we could send these people on their way and we could choose each other and
And
put a
drink more.
button on this and then drink more.
So damn lucky. See you next time.